Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today I have quite the story for you. This story is all about a guy who's 34 years old, and he shares his story how after 5 years with a gal who he truly thought was amazing, the one, no red flags, nothing, ended his relationship with her, ended the engagement with her after finding out that the entire time during their relationship she was partaking in a group activities, if you will, with other people. Obviously, it's called group activities, and not the good kind. And he's writing in to share this story here, one, to be therapeutic for him, but also to warn guys how, as much as you may think you may know someone, you may not always know who they are, and they're doing a damn good job of masquerading what's going on. And this guy here, thank the Lord, upon finding out the true situation, he handles it like a boss, kicking her to the curb, kicking her out. And when we go through this story here, when you hear, when she knows she's caught, the excuses and the things she says, it is, like I said, right out of the Hobag handbook. Kid you not. But nothing is going to change this guy's mind. And so now he's writing in to share the story in hopes that, God forbid this ever happens to you guys, to know that you're not alone. But also to give a lot of warning signs and just to teach you guys, you gotta not just keep your eyes up for red flags, you gotta look for red flags. Because this guy really, he had a lot of this knowledge prior to their relationship. He was already going in with some terms and conditions and setting boundaries and all that, and still this happened. Right? He had no idea. And I don't want that happening to you guys, and he certainly doesn't want that either. So that'd be a very good one to go over here. So it starts off, says here, hello SSM. I have no idea if my story will be useful for anything, but after watching your channel for over a year now, I figured I'd send it in just in case. Bro, with this story, I don't know how you couldn't think that I wouldn't be sharing this one, but because this is quite the story. Maybe, just maybe, my situation can help out some other guys. If you don't think it's useful, no big deal, and keep on putting out your videos. They really help me see the world for how it is. I'm 34 years old and I have a solid career. Last month I ended an almost 5-year relationship with my fiancée. In November it would have been 5 years, and that was when our wedding was scheduled. Well, you dodged a big one, my friend. Oh my God. I guess I can call this a blessing in disguise. But for now I'm still sifting through the fallout and separating our lies. If I had to name the biggest lesson I've learned is that you can never really know who a person is, even after living with them for a few years. Yes, it's crazy how people can disguise and masquerade who they really are. I've been watching RP content for a few years now. That's how I ran across your channel. I'll never forget the first video I saw. It was the one where the girlfriend failed a loyalty test when one of her friends instigated her looking through her OP's phone, insinuating that he was talking to other girls. This was after he dumped a bunch of RP knowledge on them. It was pure gold and funny as hell. It reminded me of my own past. I was that blue pill guy that did everything wrong. It wasn't until I was close to 30 years old and about a year before I met my last girlfriend, I'll call her Jane, who's 32. I was in 2 serious relationships before her, and that ended tragically. And looking back now, I've educated myself predictably. It was in my early 30s, mid-30s, when 100% I was turned to the RP side, guys. And I had lots of things for me that moved me closer to this knowledge. Like I said before, I was a typical nice guy growing up. I was conditioned for that. That's what I thought you had to be. I didn't know any better. And I had no one to tell me this shit. Well, no. My dad would tell me things like I should have lots of girlfriends. Yeah, my dad was a regular Chad back in the day. And other things like that. And I didn't listen. I should have. Rest in peace, Dad. But anyhow, I made all the mistakes. But you learn. And you finally have that moment that you see the whole world completely different. Just like Neo. Anyway. At the time, I didn't see any of the red flags, but now I've got some time and distance. I have to admit that I was the biggest problem. Not because I did anything wrong in the relationships, but because I turned a blind eye and allowed those women to abuse me, my trust, and my finances. A long time ago, I was the guy that would say, I don't care if they do girls' nights. I trust her. The joke was on me, and twice. Never again. In both my previous relationships, they were cheating while doing the girls' night thing. I should have learned the first time around, but I chalked it up to just her being a horrible person. You heard the expression, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. If she looks like a party girl, you get the gist of it. Yes, party girls, whatever you want to call them, carousel riders, you can't turn a HOE into a housewife. It's not going to happen. But guys, sadly, have to learn the hard way. That's why I share these stories, so that maybe, just maybe, you guys hear enough of these stories that at the very least, upon you dating a relationship, guys, start dating a girl like this, or you come across one, you're like, hang on here. This is what SSM talks about here. I'm going to be careful. Or I'm going to turn around and head for the hills. In many of your videos, there's a reoccurring theme. Some event or situation that is an eye-opening experience for guys, and they start educating themselves. There you go. It was no different for me. The last girl before my fiance left me financially crippled to the point that I nearly had to file for bankruptcy. I didn't, and eventually worked myself out of the hole that I was in. That was a time when I started opening my eyes and looking for answers. There wasn't much RP content back then, but I'm glad that it is becoming more and more available. It's becoming more available, but the problem is that now people are aware of this, and this content goes against the narrative, and one by one, different channels or different guys are being shut down or demonetized. So I'm hoping like hell, by being smart and being careful, I'm going to be around for a while. This is another reason why I'm starting my website in December. I mentioned in the video I did yesterday that I can have something off of YouTube. The guys can share their stories and all that, so I can, stay on there. You never know. But we shall see. Knowing some of this stuff would have saved me a ton of pain and embarrassment. By the time I met Jane, I had changed the way I thought about relationships and women in general. But I was still a relationship guy. Jane fixed that for me. I'll never bother taking another woman seriously. But I'll get what happened. I'm sorry if I ramble a bit. All this is still fresh and I'm still pissed off. I'll try to keep it on as point as I can, and I'm not sure how long these stories should be, but I'll try only to include the important parts. If I wander down the rabbit hole, feel free to omit anything you want. Bro, your story, it's long, but it's not crazy long. I first met Jane in 2018 at a Halloween party that was being hosted by one of my friends. She was there with her best friend Angie and her best friend's husband Tom. I've changed all the names, of course. It had been nearly 2 years since my last relationship, and I was freshly back on the market after getting my life put back together. I almost skipped the party altogether, but my friend that was hosting it basically dragged me out of my apartment to get me back to the living. Now that I think about it, I might have to kick his ass. Yeah, I'm sure you're wondering, if you never went to that party, you never would have met her, and, but then again, maybe you could be married to some other woman and trapped in a marriage, and a bad marriage. But now you went through that, but now you have this knowledge. Our first meeting was by chance that we both happened to be dressed up as pirates. By the end of the night, we were basically spending all our time together. That turned into calls, texts, dates, and eventually dating. Our first real date was in November, and that's when I consider the beginning of our relationship. It wasn't until we'd been dating for about 6 months when she brought up the idea of us being a couple. Well, good for you not being the one to bring up the relationship first. So you learned some things. Nice guys always bring up the relationship first. Where are we? Where is this going? Will you be my girlfriend? Better to have her bring it up. I wasn't against the idea, but after being burned in my last couple of relationships, I was open with my boundaries. I mean, completely open. I told her I would love to, but after hearing my boundaries, she probably wouldn't want to date me. Here were my boundaries. Number 1, no girls and guys nights out. Number 2, no going out drinking without the other. Number 3, an open phone policy. Number 4, no hanging out with friends of the opposite sex. And number 5, if the word open relationship ever comes out of her mouth, just assume we're done. Okay, I don't blame you at all for these terms and conditions here, given what you've been through, and most certainly what everyone is well aware of what happens nowadays. No discussion and no argument. I imagine some people might think I was being controlling or possessive, but I didn't see it that way. If you want to be in a committed relationship, these are all the things that end most of the relationships, and I see with my own history. I took the stance that if she wanted to be with me, she didn't need those things. When I finished telling her my boundaries, she said yes almost immediately. But I told her to think about it for a few days because I wasn't going to have this discussion again, and I wanted her to think about any boundaries she might have. Okay. You're like, okay, you can have some boundaries too. I'll hear you out. And yeah, in my opinion, and I read this obviously yesterday, the fact that you laid those things out in 2022 or whatever the hell this was, 2018, my bad, to a modern gal, and she didn't immediately get remotely annoyed or didn't pull you're controlling or insecure or some pushback, that tells me that she's a serial cheater and liar. She's like, ha ha, okay, asshole. I'll say yes to this, but I'm still going to do things on the side anyway. We let the topic drop for about a week, and she said she still wanted to be with me, so we made it official. We dated for about 4 years, and she was the model girlfriend. I'd become pretty good friends with her friends, Angie and Tom as well, and everything seemed to be going great. I proposed to her this past Valentine's Day, and we set the date for our wedding about a week before Thanksgiving of this year, so most of our families would be available. We moved in together in March, and until last month, everything was going great. Okay, so he's with her for 4 years. Then he proposes. Obviously, he's older. And then he did the moving in thing recently as the final test. And he's thinking everything's great. But as he said in the beginning, you never really know someone. One of the activities we used to do pretty regularly was to go over to Tom and Angie's on Friday or Saturday evening to play cards. Before meeting them, I'd never been into playing cards, but they all loved it, and I've grown to appreciate the social time. We would normally play 2 or 3 nights a month, and that went on for years. I've never been a card person, except when I was little. My grandma, we played Uno and Kings in the Corners. My grandma loved to gamble. She wasn't a compulsive gambler, but it was fun for her, and she found a way to fucking gamble with Uno. I'm not kidding. She came with a big jar of change and bet on, I kid you not. My grandma, my godfather would bet on how fast an ant could cross the road. I kid you not. But yeah, but they weren't compulsive gamblers, but it was fun for them. Angie seemed nice, and she always treated me with respect. In my view, she seemed fairly conservative, which I found interesting since Tom seemed to be her polar opposite. Without sounding too judgmental, he seemed like a typical soy boy. I'm not saying that as a derogatory term. Dude, you can make fun of him all you want on this channel. It's just how he is. In my mind, he was a bit too feminine, and while we were cool with each other, I wouldn't have called us friends. At least friends that go out and do things together. Every time I was around him, I was in a group setting with our ladies, so I guess he was more of an acquaintance that I didn't hate. For most of our relationship, I never had a problem with Jane hanging out with Angie. It was always at her house, and as far as I know, never out clubbing. In the past 5 years together, she never gave off any vibes and told me something was off. Besides, I spent time with my friends as well. It was usually to watch a game or on TV or just shoot the shit. The only time I could think of that they did anything other than hang out at Angie's house was last year in July. We had tickets to a concert, but due to an issue I had at work, I didn't get to go. We've been looking forward to it for a few months, so Jane went with Tom and Angie, and from what they said, they all had a great time. It sucked, but what can you do about work? I think that's enough background, but honestly, didn't see anything in our relationship that made me question Jane at all, and I was looking. That brings me to what happened last month. So y'all heard this. Sounds like they got a good thing going on. Sounds like she's complied to his boundaries and all that. But you never really know someone until they're having orgies. Says it was a typical Friday night, and we went to Tom and Angie's to play some cards and hang out. I never been much of a drinker, so it didn't bother me to hang out while they were all getting drunk. There were a few things that happened when we got there that got my gut twisting in knots before I found out what was going on. The first thing was, when we made it to their place, Tom wasn't home. He had to work an extra shift, but was going to be home in a few hours. There was another guy at the house with Angie. For the story, we will call him Brian. I guess he was one of their other friends, but in all the time that I've known Tom and Angie, I have never ever heard of him before. When we walked in, he smiled as soon as he saw Jane and gave her a hug. She hugged him back briefly, but it was a bit awkward. It was clear that she knew who he was, but before I could ask any questions, Angie intervened and introduced him as one of her coworkers that was going to sit in for Tom until he got home. When we went into the dining room to sit down at the table, Angie took Brian into the kitchen for a few minutes, and they came back out with some drinks for everyone. While they were out of the room, I asked Jane how she knew him, and she just said that it was one of Tom and Angie's friends, and that he was a nice guy. I asked why I never heard his name before, and she said she thought she mentioned him before. Bullshit. Brian and Angie made it to the table and handed out drinks and cut our conversation short. We ended up playing some cards, and everyone was having a good time. Brian's one of those drunks that gets talkative and happy when he's drinking. I couldn't help noticing that through the evening, he kept giving Jane some looks, and she was avoiding looking at him as much as she could. Pay attention to people's actions, guys. I didn't know what was going on, but it was clear that she was uncomfortable, and I was going to talk to her about it when we got home. Angie seemed like her normal self, but the more she was drinking, she seemed to be flirting with Brian. Isn't this the same Angie that has the boyfriend who's not there yet? It was almost 9 o'clock at night when they ran out of beer, and Brian wanted to make a beer run. Since I was the only one that was sober and I didn't mind, I offered to give him a ride. Jane said she wanted to come instead of Brian, but there was no way I was going to leave that guy alone with Angie while her husband wasn't home. Jane was pretty insistent, but I told her I wasn't leaving the two of them and we would be right back. Well, how interesting that your girlfriend Jane, your fiance you're going to be married to pretty soon, really doesn't want you hanging out alone with this Brian character. I wonder why. She relented, but I could tell she was acting nervous. I would have had to been blind and stupid not to see it. It would also give me a chance to talk to Brian. The drive to the convenience store was only about a 20-minute ride, and from the moment we were in the car, Brian was talking about how much fun the evening was, and he couldn't wait for Tom to get home. I asked him how long he's known Tom and Angie, and he said for a few years. He asked me how long I've been hanging out with Jane, she's your fiance, and how long I'd known Tom and Angie, and I told him for almost 5 years, and then he said something that didn't make any sense. He asked me if Jane and me were staying for the after party. After party? I asked him what he was talking about, and he started laughing and said how much fun they're going to have, and told me how lucky I was to have Jane because she was a wildcat. This is when you're driving, and he's there on the passenger side, and you do a fucking hammer strike at his head. Wildcat. I almost stopped the car and beat the shit out of him. But I asked him how long he's known Jane, and he said for some time that he'd been friends with Tom and Angie. Well, isn't it interesting that Jane hasn't mentioned you before? I didn't think he could tell. I don't think he could tell that I was angry because he kept blabbering away. I asked him when was the first time he met Jane, and he said it was last year after they all went to a concert. Remember the concert that this guy didn't go to? But they all been meeting up for a few times a month since then. I think my brain stopped working at that point. I asked him directly if he had been sleeping with Jane, and for the first time he looked confused and gave me a look that he told me that he had no idea I wasn't aware. Wasn't aware of what? He said that Jane told him that I was okay with it and that we were in an open relationship. There you go. Another one of these stories where the girl tells some dude, oh yeah, we're in an open relationship, meanwhile the boyfriend or husband has no clue. I pulled my car over on the side of the road and told him to get the fuck out of my car. He said, dude, I'm sorry, just give me a ride back. No, asshole, you get the fuck out of my car. You got a phone. You can call Uber or Lyft, or I don't give a shit who you fucking call. He said, dude, I'm sorry, just give me a ride back. I told him to get the fuck out or I'll leave you bleeding on the side of the road. He wasn't very happy about it and was cussing me as he got out of my car. So, on the ride back to Tom and Angie's house, I called Tom, and when he answered, I asked him if he's been effing Jane. He told me that he thought I knew because Jane and Angie told him that we were in an open relationship, but that I never wanted to talk about it, so he never mentioned it to me. What a freaking B-I-T-C-H. Gotta watch what I say here, because I want to get thrown off YouTube. Dude, I'm sorry. But you know what? You could have married her. That is the only silver lining to this awful situation. 4 years he's with her, guys. 4 years, you heard him say how great it was, and model girlfriend, and all that, living together. And he finds out that she regularly partakes in these activities with multiple people. And people think I'm the enemy for sharing these stories to make guys aware. Isn't that ironic? Let's see, where am I? I asked him how long it's been going on, and what he said really effed me up. He said they've all been having fun for nearly 7 years, and was swearing that he thought I was aware and okay with everything. Yeah, okay, Mr. Soy Boy Man Bun. I told him to delete my phone number, and if I ever saw him again face to face, I was going to F him up before hanging out. Well, that would feel good, beating up a soy boy. By the time I made it back to their house, my anger had turned into numb resolve. When I walked in, Angie was on the phone, and it was clear she was talking to Tom. They both looked panicked, and as soon as she saw me, Jane was on her feet saying that she could explain, and it wasn't what it looked like. Chapter 2 and 3 of the Hobag Handbook. It's always the same lines. I'm so sorry. I can explain. I was drunk. Whatever. Angie asked where Brian was, and I told him that I left him on the side of the road and told Jane to take off the engagement ring. I could hear Angie still on the phone arguing with Tom, and Jane was freaking out and just kept saying that she could explain. I felt like I wanted to barf, but I told her to take off the ring and I would take it off of her. You're darn right. That ring, which you probably spent Lord knows how much of your hard-earned money on, I want that back, thank you very much. Unfortunately, it depreciated in value, probably substantially. It took about 10 minutes, but she gave the engagement ring back, and by that time, Angie was off the phone, and they were both trying to get me to calm down. But I was done. As soon as she gave me back the ring, I left, but not before telling Jane that she had until the next day to come and get her shit out of the apartment, or I was going to throw it in the trash. When I left, she was bawling her eyes out, and they were both trying to talk to me. Yeah, her friend was trying to talk you down because her friend's perception of you was that you're a nice guy, and if they did the I'm sorries and kind of explain and mind F you, that they could get you to change your mind. But clearly they were wrong. I've had a little more than a month to think about everything, and there weren't any signs of what she was up to. Not a damn one. I still have no idea how I got played so well, but I'm done. Dude, plenty of other guys have your story where they had no idea. Now remember, guys, he's been watching this or taking in this type of content for a while now. That was the last time I'll ever give a woman a chance to F me up like that. Jen and Angie came over the next day trying to convince me to give her another chance, but I told her to get her crap and get out. Good. I'm sure you've gone through the roller coaster of emotions. You wouldn't be human otherwise. Although some guys just go instantly numb and that's that. But I'm glad you didn't change your mind. It was yesterday that I saw Jane again for the first time since that day, and she was begging me to talk to her. I forget how old Jane is. I'm sure you mentioned in the beginning of the story. I'm a little tired because I got no sleep last night. The movers were here this morning packing up everything, and I'm off to Florida tomorrow morning. So this and another video I filmed, and the last one's in Massachusetts. So I'm fucking tired, but I believe you mentioned how old she is in the story. And well, let's just say Father Time is against her. So she realizes that she wants to get a ring on her finger and be married, and she screwed that up. So she's begging and pleading. She said that she was staying with Tom and Angie for a few weeks, but I guess Tom was pissed that they lied to him and put him in the situation, and now he's threatening to divorce Angie. Okay, well, Tom's redeeming himself a little bit. Yeah, this Tom dude, apparently Mr. Soy Boy with a man bun, I'm speculating as a man bun because soy boys usually have a man bun, that he didn't know. And he wants to divorce Angie, so good. Jane was asking if I would give her another chance if she cut both of them out of her life, and apologize for her mistake. Mistake. We all know what a mistake is. That's not a mistake. All that was at my front door. I think she got my answer when I closed the door in her face. I really thought I knew her. I was constantly looking for red flags or any behaviors that would tell me something was off. I swear there weren't any. I have no idea how a person can live two completely different lives. The person I thought I knew never really existed, and I feel like the biggest moron on the planet for not seeing it. I still can't believe that Tom, if he was telling the truth, would believe that I was okay with my girl getting railed and that I didn't want to hear about it. Are people really that gullible? People really are that gullible, but there are also guys out there that are cucks, and they actually get turned on by having their girl getting plied by other dudes. There are fucking wacko guys out there that are like that. I told my friends what happened, and none of them believe a guy would buy that story. Flip a coin. But I'm sure he had motivations because he's hooking up with two women. Who knows? So that is it, SSM. I have no idea if there's anything useful in my story, and if not, no worries. It was therapeutic just to write everything out. Sorry if it seems jumbled, my mind is pretty screwed up right now. Bro, there is value to every story every guy sends. And believe me, a story like this is going to get... I guarantee you, when I publish this video will probably, given the subject matter... Within 24 hours of I'm saying it now, 24 hours of publishing this video, as long as I make a good title and picture, at least 40,000 views. Probably 50, but definitely 40. So a lot of guys are going to watch this, and they're going to comment away, and they're going to say, hey, I too was in a situation where I didn't see anything coming. So don't beat yourself up too bad about this. But you know what? You had the bad experiences before her, and yet you got back on the horse, tried again, and again this shit happened. So when people wonder why so many guys are walking away, they're saying, that's it, I'm not just done with marriage, or not getting married, I'm done with relationships. I'm done with fucking dating, given my bad experiences, and it's not like I was been a bad guy, and the stories I hear, the random stories online, things that happen to friends, family, the environment today, it just doesn't work. That's why I call it Sodom and Gomorrah 2.0. And the guys are now focused on themselves and their bros and their dog, or me with a couple cats, and doing what makes them happy. And they don't need to be married or have a girlfriend to be fulfilled, or to feel like you're not a man if you don't have a lady on your arm, because, well, sadly, most are not ladies nowadays. So you got guys that have your back here. And I'm sorry it happened, man. I really am. But again, if there's any silver line to this fucking crazy story here, is that at least you found out before you said I do. Because once you say I do, now the government's involved. And you know what I mean? I know you know this. So all I can say is, like I've said countless times in other stories like this, is you take it one day at a time. You take it one day at a time to heal, and you may have days where you're just feeling like a loser, or how stupid could I be, or maybe I misjudged her, or I doubt that, but you never know. And don't let yourself make a mistake of certainly taking her back because you're feeling lonely or depressed. You don't need her. You certainly don't need a woman to complete you. That stupid Jerry Maguire shit. And spend time with your bros, your real bros, and your family, those that love you. And focus on things that make you happy, your hobbies, your interests, whatever, and you're going to be all right. And you sharing this story will be yet another guy out there on the channel, in the community, who shares this story. And I guarantee you, because your story is, given the subject matter, is going to get a lot of attention, will help more guys out there all over the world. There are going to be guys watching this in Switzerland, or Mexico, or New Jersey, and it's going to help them out. I guarantee you that. And then one day they might write their story and saying, thanks to that video about that guy whose girlfriend, whose fiance was doing what she was doing, that helped me out. So that's what you're doing here. And like you said, I'm sure it's very therapeutic to get it out. And that's why I do what I do. And that's why I'm starting the website down the road, that guys can get their thing out as well, but they'll be hearing more about that down the road. I've had to hold off on the website launch from July until December because I started the house hunting process much earlier than I thought, and it has been quite an adventure. But tomorrow, off to Florida with the cats in the back, and they're going to be meowing the entire time for 22 hours. My ears I'll be going deaf with meows, but I love them, so, I'll just turn up the music. So guys, last video in Massachusetts, and it's been great. And I All my fellow massholes out there, I thank you for your hospitality, but it's time for a change. But anyhow, guys, that is it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let this guy know what you think. Definitely give him a shout out. Give him some support. He needs it, as well as we all need some help from time to time. And of course, guys, if you got a great story like to share, definitely email it to me, strongsuccessfulmale@gmail.com. Again, just give me some time to get to it, and I will if I can. And again, if I can't get to it, remember, I get some stories that people sent me 2 months ago, so I will get to it. And if I can't, that's also why I'm starting the website, that I can, with your permission, put these stories to print so everybody can have their stories told and can be heard. Because that's what the guys always said. They want to get off their chest and they want to share their story to help other dudes, and it makes them feel better. That's what I want. And by the way, the future website, when it's launched, and I'll announce it as we're getting close, it's free. You don't have to pay a membership, none of that bullshit. In fact, there aren't going to be any advertisements there or pop-ups and any of that shit. It's free. It's my gift to you. Maybe way down the road, I'll throw a few advertisements on there so I can make a buck, but I do well enough on here. So you guys can enjoy these stories if you like to read the stories and make things easier for you. And be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.